Welcome everyone to the second community meeting of Data Privacy Protocol Alliance. It's great to see so many of you on today and to welcome you. So on the agenda today, we're going to have a introduction from George Stella and Chantel from Big Token. I'm going to give you, my name is Gilbert Hill, I'm going to give you an update on our membership and our activity. Then we're going to have a talk from one of our members, Shiv Malik, about data unions and federated income. And finally, it's over to all of you. You have the floor for Q&A, and tech permitting, we'll be having a poll. And then finally, at 45 minutes, we'll be discussing next steps and future meeting. So first of all, welcome to everyone, and welcome to George, Chantel, and Shiv.
Great, thank you, Gilbert. Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Chantel White. I'm the managing director here at Big Token, and I wanted to take this time to first and foremost welcome everybody. We're tremendously excited as we continue our initiative to really build a decentralized data ecosystem for the world's data to be stored, shared, and exchanged. This mission is only possible with all of you today, and we're tremendously excited to continue on the conversation. I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to George Stella, Big Token's co-founder and president, who's going to speak a little bit more. George?
Thanks, Chantel. Hey, guys. At Big Token, we're passionate about our mission, allowing people to own and monetize their data. Our platforms already provide millions of users with rewards and income from their data and activity, and allows brands and data scientists access to identity creation and over 40,000 unique points of segmentation, data science, and survey science with confidence. As a founding member, Big Token wants to share our insights with the DPPA community, exploring the exciting opportunities for decentralization coming out of the blockchain and Web3 space, and bring our partners along for this journey. Key to the DPPA mission is building an open ecosystem with a collective voice and a common language across the people driving positive change in our industry. This is unique. Therefore, developing our technical committees, shared standards, and terminology will be a major focus in coming months. And we want to learn how other DPPA members are making a difference to this new data economy. Particularly critical to this mission, I'm proposing we begin laying the roadmap for a specific solution to begin building on. I'm going to make recommendations to that end in the coming weeks. Thank you guys for everybody joining today. And with that, I'll hand it to Gilbert.
Thanks a lot, George, and thanks, Chantel. Where did this need for an alliance come from? Well, ever since the Lumascape made its debut in 2010, this map we see here of publishers, intermediaries, and platforms which exist between brands who want eyeballs on their products and the consumers of online content has been explosive in size, and it's been divisive. So from around 5,000 companies covered back then, it's now reached over 9,500 companies in 2021, representing revenues of $120 billion a year. Now, ad tech supporters have pointed out this growth as signaling an innovative industry, while detractors argue it's soaking up too much money out of the ad supply chain. Now, wherever you stand, the complexity of this Web 2 ecosystem and its automated practices long ago exceeded the capacity of the human brain to understand them in detail. The only comparable example is financial markets, or now crypto DeFi trading. Now, in this climate fueled by data breaches and website policies which don't get read, doubt, cynicism, and conspiracy theories can grow among citizens. Now, this leads to a situation where, as a privacy technologist, entrepreneur, and educator, the top question I get asked is my cell phone listening to me? Now, the idea that phones are bugging us when we talk about, I don't know, say pet food and then get served ads for doggo munch and kitty nibbles is denied by manufacturers and platforms. They argue, rightly, they have enough legitimate data points from web usage, loyalty programs, and transaction history to predict what we want when we want it. But it's still an uncanny feeling. We need to bring consumers along and cut them in on the deal. Now, as we'll see later, this creates much needed transparency and control. It manages our risk while being a multiplier to value. After all, while only a minority of people hold and trade crypto, we all have our data. So, onto our membership. Now, as George mentioned, the DPPA mission is to create a different type of ecosystem where the world's leading data-centric and privacy-first companies, investors, brand partners, and Web3 innovators can collaborate to define universal standards, technical solutions, and a route for data to be exchanged for value in a transparent, accessible way. Now, at our first DPPA community meeting, where some of you I recognize were there, we announced our founder members. Big Token shared their data blockchain proposal, and we covered two key areas of the new data economy: DAOs and data sovereignty. Now, since then, we've added 2 new founding members and 11 charter members to our alliance, and we'll be hearing from one of them in a moment. Now, this takes our current member totals to 18 and 53 respectively, and we'll be adding to them over the coming months up to a planned total of 100. Now, in terms of member structure, we conducted 18 one-on-one phone interviews in just the past 2 weeks with current and prospective DPPA members across the brand, tech, data, and consumer sectors to understand what their current goals are and what they think should be the focus for our committee structure. And I want to thank those interviewed for some great insights into what they want the DPPA to look like and also into their own values. Now, what came through strongly was the belief that it should be one member, one vote, and universal priority access to events run under the DPPA logo, regardless of sponsorship. Now, beyond this, we created a structure around 3 types of membership, which reflect the range of organizations, projects, and individual practitioners, and gives everyone the opportunity to contribute and benefit from DPPA based on their ability to. Now, as mentioned already, we've got founder members who contribute to the direction and governance of the DPPA through its leadership and code of conduct in return for providing resources and potential sponsorship for activities and events. And our charter members bring deep expertise into specific technical, market, and governance sectors and play a key role in setting the structure and direction of our committees, which drive our output. And then finally, our community members spread the word of DPPA among their circles of influence and provide input to our code of conduct, which I'll come to in a moment, and our proposals and our working documents from membership of committees and also participation in our events. So coming on to that committee structure, well, as George said, these are a key priority in coming weeks as we turn our goals into shared standards and technical output. Now, the governance committee, together with our code of conduct, represents the belief system that we as members share around data ethics and best practice in our industry, and it guides our route to ultimate decentralization as an organization. And adherence to the code is a requirement of long-term DPPA membership, and we plan to offer certification to members and co-branding opportunities around this at a time when many regulators are starting to support this. Now, the technical committee leads rollout of our blockchain roadmap and development, and it has input from vendor members, Web3 projects, and individual experts. And the output of this committee ranges from white papers through to shared commercial solutions. And then finally, the community committee ensures that all members have an equal voice and representation in our events, our output, and task forces. Our members are also advocates. And this way, the DPPA stays relevant and recognized as an agent of positive change. Now, as George pointed out, our breadth and influence in terms of the members we already have on board and our supporters is already unique. And I've always craved a space where interests in data commerce, privacy, and blockchain converge, and we've got it here. So we want DPPA to be a showcase and a springboard for individual members, organizations, and projects to a larger audience via our thought leadership and media activity. And while we've focused so far on Web3 and universal data income in our community meetings, it's vital we have agency representation, as they are the trusted advisors to the brands who share our ethical framework and bring the scale and distribution to make this change happen. Now, each member has their say and can start to shape the direction of DPPA, which is a change from a traditional model of professional associations and trade bodies. And this flows into our voting and access to events and sponsored content. And our code of conduct is a set of principles which we as members share around best practice in our industry, as I mentioned. And we believe that working to this code as part of business as usual, rather than a compliance obligation, is a strong statement of the deal consumers get when they choose your product or service. And we want to build on this. So we want membership of the DPPA and adherence to the code to unlock use of our logos as a brand credential for member companies, and they be accessible through a certification scheme, which can also provide DPPA with income down the line. Now, regulators worldwide, led by the EDPP in Europe, have made it clear that they're interested in such schemes as a means for them to devolve responsibility and move away from the old model of regulation in such a dynamic, fast-moving industry. And finally, and most importantly, members can contribute to the design and benefit from a shared technological solution coming out of a DPPA blockchain project, whether it's federated consent, income, or accessing crypto payment rails. We want our members to enjoy practical benefits that they can share with customers and consumers alike. So from membership benefits to returns on investments. Now, in the crypto and the meme stock world, we've all heard a lot about people 5xing, 10xing, even 100xing their investments, but rather less so in recent weeks. Now, I want to introduce Shiv Malik, who's CEO at one of our founder members, Pool. He's going to be focusing on a major pillar of the new data economy, data unions. Now, data unions are a way to move beyond the current zero-sum game around data, where there are only a handful of winners. And they've just been enshrined in European regulation as a vehicle for people to have a voice and bargain for their data's value, and could be a way to 10x the value of the ecosystem as a whole. And in fact, I was reading a piece in Fortune magazine this morning, which argued exactly this point. So Shiv's going to take us through this opportunity and how Pool will incubate what could become hundreds of data unions, each providing consumer insights. And afterwards, if it's okay with you, Shiv, we can take a few questions.
Sure
So
thing.
over to you. I'll stop sharing and let you jump.
Thanks, Gilbert. Let me just bring up my screen. Give me a sec. There we go. So thanks, Gilbert, for that really kind introduction. You can see my screen, right? And my slides.
Yep.
Yeah, great. And I'm actually really glad you're working with the DPPA. Gilbert, if you don't know, has been actually a really an amazing powerhouse in getting the European data union scene sort of off the ground and functional. He's worked with a number of data unions here on this side of the pond, if you want. And he is hoping to that he can sort of do the same in the US. So I want to kick off with relaying to you what our vision is. So it's pretty simple: data controlled by those who create it. And it'll be a vision, obviously, that many of you share. So aside from, if you want, vision alignment, why am I here? Well, I want to talk to you about how I think we can sort of fix today's problems in the data economy. And I want to introduce the concept of a data union to you, as Gilbert has already mentioned. And I think a good number of you will already realize that you're actually running one already. If you want the talk is sort of structured like this, what is a data union, why they're about to explode as a business model, what are the common problems to scaling, how Pool will help solve all of this, and why, finally, working together will 10x the ecosystem. We might not get to 100x, but 10x for sure. But before I want to get to all of this, I want to talk about the problems in the data economy at the moment. Lots of you will know this already, so I'm going to kind of rush over this bit if you want. So today, obviously, and this is, I think, for me, always the most interesting point. Personal data is a byproduct of digital activities, right? And that's actually why it's of poor quality. You don't go to an application oftentimes to go there specifically to create data that will then be monetized, right? It's almost always as a byproduct of what you do. And that's why the output at the end is obfuscated, it's often hidden, the provenance can't be given, et cetera, et cetera. It's also harvested without explicit consent, creating huge ethical issues. It's often locked up then in silos. Cookies and IDFAs are being terminated, as we know. In fact, there's a bit of a stay of execution on that front till late 2023. But nevertheless, that execution is coming. And legislation will kill the current paradigm. We've had a whole round of legislative sort of acts put into draft in the EU, but you've also got a new legislative agenda in the US coming down the pipeline, as you will have noticed in the last few weeks from the Democratic administration and various senators in Congress. So what does that vision for tomorrow look like? Well, firstly, I think Web3 payments and smart contracts enable explicit user consent to scale the share and reward data sales model. The second bit of that is that new regulatory frameworks create trusted data brokering organizations and an independent raw data market for personal data. And that last bit is really interesting, an independent raw data market for personal data, because we don't have that at the moment, right? It's not really, usually it's in most sort of businesses' interests to silo all of that raw data so they can generate analytics on top of it. But actually, if you start thinking about it, that raw data layer is useful to a lot of other people. It's not just as an analytics layer, right? So if you can create an independent raw data layer, which is what the EU is actually looking to achieve by creating data unions and data cooperatives, as they call them, then you get a much larger market to sell that data to. For example, apps who want to, bypass network effects, they just want to buy that in. Well, here, you could imagine a location data union providing that information in real time to a new app who wants to compete with Google Maps or Waze, which now obviously is also owned by Google. So finally, on that point, for that vision for tomorrow, consumer data is the product, right? It's no longer a byproduct, it's the product. So what's the solution to these sort of set of problems? Well, it's actually really simple. And you guys have mostly worked it out already, so I'm preaching to the converted if you want. Instead of spying on users to collect their data, just ask them, right? Just ask them if they want to share it. It seems so simple, and then reward them when they do, right? So I'm sure you've all clicked in with that ethos, but here's a more sort of specified way of doing it. If that's the kind of the proposition, then what's the tactical way of implementing all of this? Well, it's a data union. A data union is a digital organization that aggregates data from creators into a single product. And when that product sells, that value is shared between its members and the operators of that union. And remember, the EU calls them data cooperatives in the legislation, but they're basically the same thing. There are other names for these as well, data trusts, data fiduciaries, but we've opted for data unions here. So it's a new model for data buyers to purchase real-time streams of raw data from people who want it to be used. So let me try and answer then why they're about to take off. Well, there's two main reasons. The first one is it's a solution that works, right? As you all know, data buyers, analytics companies, advertise, potentially app makers, AI, machine learning organizations, and so many more. Actually, everyone is looking for a solution now to how to collect information in a way that's actually acceptable to digital citizens at large. And yes, as I said, they may have that stay of execution but it's just a stay of execution when it comes to Chrome and cookies. Meanwhile, the rest of the populace is obviously sick of being spied on, and everyone else in the data economy, from businesses to sort of regulators, they're tired of information being siloed, right? So the data union framework works to solve all of these problems in a really neat and elegant fashion. The second big reason is because this is being backed by the EU. It makes a big difference. It's being backed by legislation and also grants of 2 billion euros. So I think, it's almost safe to say, knock on wood, that within 18 months, you're going to have DUs springing up all across Europe. And we're already seeing those buyers taking this solution into account. So when we talk to some of the biggest advertisers in the world, They understand this is one of their basket of solutions that they've got to be investing in. It might not be the solution that works in the end, but it's definitely one that's part of their basket of solutions that they're looking forward to cooperating with and building upon and investing in. They already exist. I mean, you guys already know this, so I'll do this very quickly. But GOGB is an app over European based largely. They did their fundraise in the UK. They raised 2.4 million at least, and they account for users of around 12 million on one hand, but sometimes they take the native app, which is a lot less. Tap My Data, and you'll know Gilbert from used to previously work at Tap, obviously, and was CEO there. They've also got funding, considerable funding and considerable numbers of users. Swash is another data union. It's a browser plugin. It has, actually, I should update that slide. They now have 60,000 users. So that's how fast they've been expanding over the last couple of months since I first put this slide down. They're looking for 6 figures in funding, but they're now looking at a 7-figure plus round. So now a few millions. So everything's moving very quickly, as you can tell for how soon my slides got outdated. So who are Pool in all of this? Well, personally, I've been working for about 3 years now to get DUs off the ground, including Swash. And along with my team, I think if you put it all together, we have about 5 years experience at scaling, building, messaging, and even helping actually to help shape and create the legislation in Europe. That's what I spent my lockdown doing, talking with bureaucrats in Brussels, which turned out to be actually pretty productive in the end. That helped create that sort of environment for data union success. And during that process, obviously, we discovered, there are a lot of commonalities that data unions have in terms of the issues that they face. So what are those issues? Well, if you want, here's a data union framework without Pool, right? So the members struggle to discover a data union and trust is low. So from the member perspective, it's a fragmented economy that they're looking at. They don't really understand how to differentiate one. Are they even called data unions, right? They're not even called the same thing. So what are these entities? Discovery is pretty difficult. From the data union application perspective, well, they have multiple wallets, right? If you're going to get paid, how do you get paid? Do I have to start managing multiple things, or do I just join the one data union and that's it? No more, thank you very much, because it's all too difficult. A lot of cognitive overhead. So from the data union operator's perspective, well, they've got to run these messaging and payment networks at the back end. That's not really their business, right? It's just a thing that they have to do. It's infrastructure. That's what it is. But you're asking them to run infrastructure as well at the same time as actually then also on top of that, building a marketplace for their data buyers. And finally, from the buyer perspective, it doesn't look great either. There's multiple marketplaces for single data products, makes the discovery really hard. It's not great for them either. So all of this isn't particularly great. Well, so what does Pool do? Well, we make it easy to manage data unions from creations through to data aggregation, payment, and engagement. And we do this by focusing on 3 core features. The first is to create, right? Tools to create, for anyone to create a data union in minutes by using the Ethereum blockchain and our platform. Really important because it's difficult to sort of get these things off the ground. Managing data unions, right? Tools to manage members, data assets, buyers with fine-tuned user-determined permissions and access controls, right? And finally, training. And I think it's probably the most important part. We have a single, or we will have a single marketplace, right, for data union product discovery, convenient payment and invoicing capabilities. So you don't have to have a data union keep building these things out for themselves individually each time they want to get established. Here's a neat architectural overview. How are we doing on time? Got 4 minutes left. Okay, good. We've added some interesting features here, which really won't work for any given data union by themselves. When you start putting them together, when you start federating them, then you get to a really interesting situation. So on your left, you have your data union members. They utilize the data union application interface, whether that's a browser plugin, it's an app on the mobile, or just a web page, right? We establish the messaging network at the back end. We run that for everyone in common. And then we have a marketplace, right? There's a couple of things I want to draw your attention to. The unitary wallet interface, the sort of top left corner. Well, a single wallet means that members can join and see and discover multiple data unions at the same time, right? Why does someone have to be a member of just one data union at a time? And also you want to manage and be able to manage all of that incoming revenue in one place, right? You don't want to do it in several different places because you'll lose track of all of this, especially when we're talking in relative terms about small amounts of money, smallish amounts of money, right? So you also want that wallet to then be able to, have integrations with PayPal. Great, right? So one wallet, in a sense, that everyone uses in common with each other, which we help establish, but we don't effectively own. We just help develop and allow data union members, data union operators to distribute that wallet to their members, right? There's also at the bottom left, there's this really exciting idea, which is the personal data vault. Now, most of you will probably have heard about personal data vaults. They've been around as an idea for at least a decade in the literature, right? But the problem with them has always been, how do you get people to, how do you incentivize people to like download the software, right? Why would they do that? Who wants their own data vault, right? What do you do with it? Well, if you already got the incentive to join a data union, great, then it's almost zero marginal cost to add in a personal data vault. And then of course you get all those benefits, right? Especially if you're talking about multiple data unions with potentially millions of users, right? All with their own personal data vault. Great, brilliant. And you've already pre-structured the data because it's coming, you're copying and pasting it effectively from a data union, right? From the application interface. And you're storing it in this data vault, which can then be queried in a zero knowledge way by all sorts of people, including, of course, people who want to sell products. They want to shape their products through an aggregated data union product and then sell them to the people who they know will probably buy them, right? Because they can query the personal data vault and go, yes, you're exactly the kind of consumer who will buy this product. It's a wonderful, wonderful potential innovation. Again, 5xing, 10xing what's already there. And finally, we also have query to data, which basically allows, it's an analytics business, which allows any business user to come along and write a query across all the data unions, right? Again, it's the power of working together means that everyone benefits, right? So it's not just product discovery on a marketplace, it's also that analytics function. I can come along, let's say I'm a huge advertiser, or I'm just I'm TripAdvisor and I want to know, okay, well, look here, I want to know where's the best investment going to be in East Asia. I can now sample across all sorts of data sets from all sorts of data unions, and that revenue will then flow back to all the data unions. So, Pool's business model is actually pretty simple. We take 5%. That's our idea. So we're here because we were sort of saying, look, should we be free? Should we do something interesting with a token? And we went for a very simple business model, which is that we will take 5% of all the cut of the transactions that occur on the marketplace and through the smart contract delivery system. And that makes it really signals to, I think, other people, we're here for the long term. Your success is our success. We're not going anywhere. And the more that you're successful, the more that we can invest that back into building out platforms and a platform that works for everyone involved. I'm not going to give you a case study. I just want to skip then to the summation. Well, I've got now -3 seconds left. Apologies, Gilbert. So why join Pool? Speed time to revenue by focusing on data product, not infrastructure. Benefit from a single marketplace with convenient fiat payment and invoicing capabilities for many Web 2.0 buyers, right? This is crucial. I didn't actually talk about the crypto payment rails, but maybe we can get to that in questions. It's actually one of the simplest things to do in many senses. Harness the power of an ecosystem by allowing members across all data unions to utilize that single wallet interface that I spoke about and that unitary payment token. I also didn't mention that, but the idea is to use one payment token, USDC. We're not asking people to use pool tokens or any other given data union token. We just want one single unitary payment token, which is already accepted by lots of different players within the Web3 community. And it's just pegged to the US dollar. And finally, last 3 points, scale revenue with query to data and that personal data vault. Stay ahead of the game, right? With best practice sharing on regulatory and other learnings, which I'm sure the DPPA will also be leading in the US. And finally, gain access to grants from various funders. We're already talking to major investors in terms of data buyers about sponsoring an incubator pipeline for all of this. That's just the first of many potential grants to get these new data unions off the ground. Hope that all makes sense. Here for questions. Gilbert, can I hand it back to you?
Fantastic. Yes, please. Let me just share my screen in turn. So thanks, Shiv. That was, I mean, I think it's a, I mean, just my personal take on it. It's a really beautiful example of a DPPA member using, you know, new tech, exploring new structures, and also a, you know, a new business model which doesn't involve, you know, it doesn't involve, you know, add to the proliferation of tokens. And so I think it's got, you know, which again at the moment is probably quite timely. And I think it's, you know, I mean, I was talking with the APTI Institute, which is part of the Omidyar Foundation this morning, and they were talking, what we're talking about is chiming exactly with what they're tasked to explore around moving this kind of Overton window from an purely extractive approach to data to compliance, to data stewardship, and obviously, you know, ultimately federated income. We've got some questions that I'd love to address. The first one is from Ricardo, and is around: do data unions look like Lanier and Weil's MDIs? Now,
Yes.
I have to admit that I don't know what the MDIs are. I do know that obviously around,
MIDs.
you know, that MIDs are okay, but, you know, I do know what they've espoused about around data is labor. Perhaps you obviously do, Shiv, so perhaps you can tell us whether, because obviously none of this is new, and actually that's its strength.
So MIDs actually stand for mediators of individual data, individuals, I think there's apostrophe S, or is it S apostrophe data. I work really closely with Glenn, and he's actually on our list of advisors. So I know his work inspired. Actually, it was the term data union came from the Radical Exchange conference about 3 years ago now, from a guy called James Felton Keith, and I was like, that sounds like a catchy term, I'll use that one. So yeah, they are basically, we are trying to make practical his vision. That's a short answer. Yes.
And another question from David is: how much overlap is there with InfoSum?
InfoSum I'm not familiar with, but so maybe the questioner wants to send. I can't research on the fly. That would be very good. But
no, that's fine. We'll come back to that. And actually, there's a question here from Avishai, which is in line with something that I was wondering, which, you know, has any thought been given to different data unions deploying different and potentially conflicting business models, and how that might work? How do we resolve potential? You know, obviously, if we're talking about a very broad church, from, you know, Tesla owner APIs through to, you know, community groups data, how do we resolve those before they explode?
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of potential conflicts that can arise. So there's sort of, you know, there's competition conflicts, and Pool's going to remain neutral on that. So if you basically have, you know, we already have a situation where there's two similar businesses doing web analytics with the same delivery model of browser plugin. They actually happen to be in different territories, but, you know, Pool will service both of them, and, you know, let competition reign on that front, and let them find the differentiators. But we will support them both. But there's also other interesting conflicts that go into the governance aspects of this, and actually this is the conversation he's been having with Glenn Weil, and then his sort of the person who runs Radical Exchange, the think tank, Matt Pruitt, in and around, you know, how an individual's data rights represented by a data union. There's going to be crossover between things and certain conflicts. How do you resolve those? Pool will help aid conflict resolution, but some of that might have to be legislative, because it gets quite complicated.
Yep, and we've got a question for it does, and I mean, you know, that's again the role of the DPPA to try and find some common ground and terminology to mitigate that. And we got a question from Dharma, which is wondering what type of organizations would be purchasing this consumer data, and how do you ensure continued privacy and security?
So we've identified on the first bit of that question about 5 different main audiences for buyers. The first and the main one, and I won't go into all of them, and I mentioned them, a few of them during the talk, sort of AI companies, hedge funds. They all have different sales processes, different needs. We've spoken to a number of them, but the big one is actually the analytics companies who already exist, right? Because they're already getting data from this very dark Web 2, resourcing it from that in that fashion. And it's actually ruining the whole data economy, because in the very least, people don't know the provenance of this data, right? You know, and it's worth remembering, when these hacks happen on big databases, where does that data go? Like, what's the business model behind a hack, right? Where do they sell it? They have to sell it to someone. Why hack it in the first place? Where does it end up? And a good number of times it'll end up eventually, after it's laundered, with a data broker who will then try and sell it on to a more legitimized sort of advertiser for insights. But they don't tell you where the provenance is. You know, there's plenty of companies, big companies out there worth billions, who turns out their business model is garnering data in this way. So they want, the brokers, that is, especially with cookies and the like, they want a new way to source raw data streams that is ethical, that allows their businesses to survive. So they're also a really big part of that too. How do you secure privacy? Well, the good news is, first of all, look, for me, privacy is one aspect of this. Consent and control is really the big thing. And privacy comes, for me at least, as a kind of that second piece. Because I think if you can have control, then you can have privacy. Turns out you can have privacy but no control, which is problematic, I think. And regulators have realized this, right? They're like, oh, sure, we have GDPR, but people still don't have any control, and things still exist. Really massive problems still exist. And all we're doing in Europe is pressing consent buttons, but I don't have any control on any of this anymore still. So resolving that, I think, is the right way, and doing it that way around is the right way. But, you know, in terms of structuring the data, obviously Pool has is putting together what we call GOPES, governance, privacy, ethics, and security systems, which we want everyone then to be able to conform to, and also shape. I think that's really important. And I can get into the fine-grained detail, but you know, each data union will have different ways in which to secure privacy. And when it comes to the personal data vault, zero knowledge or privacy enhancing technologies, PETs, will really come to the fore, right? Because they have a place to be implemented, and they really do work. So yeah.
Great, and I'm mindful of the time, but I've got one question which I'll jump in on, which has come from Dominic, which is about how do rights fit in with this. And I think that's what's really interesting to me about that is that when we were doing, you know, respecting rights is obviously a key tenet of GDPR, and the kind of the genie is out of a bottle of that. So every company, individual company, which is a data controller, which is holding pots of data, has to respect rights, and they do. You know, they do a varying, sort of varyingly good job around that. The smart companies, as we know, and again, talking with a number of members of the Alliance, were saying that we want to go beyond compliance. We want to be seen as wearing the white hats. They were saying, you know, there's this move from third party to first party. And, you know, what I really liked was a concept of, you know, declared data, that giving people control. So it's, you know, the Overton window, like I say, is moving from compliance obligations where rights management has been bundled in to a position of control. And then again, with what you're starting to sketch out, Shiv, and actually act on, is actually giving people agency and to work collectively to bargain for their data. So rights shouldn't, you know, if you're, I've long believed that you need to move something as important as rights, which sits in, you know, rights are what gives your data legitimacy and value. And that's the thing. So if you move that away from a compliance space, I got to do this because GDPR or CCPA, to the engines of each business owning that relationship and blending in conversation with rights, either in the form of like some kind of tool or some wallet, or, you know, just by training individuals or adherence to a code of conduct like we're enshrining in DPPA, you get to you get to the heart of the value of data and its risk quicker, and also, as you know, you will be pleasantly surprised how people react if you ask them respectfully in context, they and sketch out what the deal is and appeal to their self-interest. Then they will say, okay, I don't have a problem with that, let's keep talking.
The two things to maybe respond in that regard.
And you have 30 seconds because we need to
yes,
move on.
Swash has a term which is zero party data. I really like that, so I won't go into it further, but I think you kind of get the idea, right? It's coming direct from user. And the second thing to say is that yes, there is privacy rights from a human rights perspective is one thing, but actually most of our privacy rules in common law, and certainly in the Anglosphere, have been derived not from a human rights framework, but from a control and ownership perspective, i.e., this is my land, get off of it, I have a right to privacy, right? It derives from that end, not from I'm a human being and I have a right to privacy, which is a slightly different set of constructs. There's a much deeper philosophical talk to go into that, but it's not for now.
Great. No, we'll park that. And before we get into the sort of the next step, so first of all, thank you very much for that, Shiv, and thanks to everyone who's asked questions. We've got a whole, we've got loads that we didn't get round to answering, so we will deal with those offline subsequently, because it's a deep, chewy concept. We're going to be launching a poll in the next couple of minutes, where all of the members will be able to vote on what you think is the most value to you in terms of membership benefits. So you should hopefully be able to, and the poll's just popped up as if by magic. Fantastic. While you're thinking about that, I will start to talk about the future, because, you know, as we've just seen, it's a really exciting time for our industry right now, where, you know, these different strands, regulatory, privacy, blockchain, and consumer tech are crunching together. They're converging and they're driving this change. And the DPPA represents that change, and we're already getting noticed. So in our member talk so far, we've obviously covered DAOs, data, and now collective income. And at our next meeting, we want to focus on brands and agencies as their ambassadors. And we also obviously welcome submissions from all members for talks which fit into the format that you've just seen and that you think the community would benefit from. So in terms of next steps, between now and the next meeting, we're going to be finalizing the structure of the governance and technical committees. We're going to continue recruiting and share more details around our membership categories. And this is all going to filter into our website and socials. So please visit our socials. Our website is dppalliance.com, and share and please stay in touch. I know that some of you are already active in sharing content on our dedicated Slack channel, which is another benefit for all members. So thanks for that in advance, as you do it more and more often, hint. And crucially, we're going to be laying out the roadmap for a specific technical solution to data sharing. So the original proposal submitted by Big Token is a great place to start. And you can find this also on the DPPA website. And finally, as parts of the world open up and move into holiday mode, we'll give plenty of notice for the next community meeting. And we want to thank you for your attendance and input today. And we look forward to hearing from you with more suggestions, more questions, and we'll also be sharing a video of this for anyone who couldn't attend due to time differences. And I'm mindful of the time, and forgive us for going over a couple of minutes. Hopefully it was worth it. Thanks to everyone, to Shiv, to George, to Chantel. And we also have the results of polling, which showed that you were most interested, from our sample, in the the bricks and mortar, the technical solutions, shared technical platform. So thanks a lot for that input. Also very strong there was visibility, events, and PR. This is your space, so thanks for joining us, and thanks for your support.